officers from banks and financial institutions, friends and media, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of IBBI, I, Dr. Navrang Saini, whole-time member, extend a warm welcome to all of you to the 5th anniversary of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. I am extremely grateful to Dr. Debroy, Chairman, Economic Advisory Council, to the Prime Minister, Shri Rajesh Verma, Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor, Ministry of Finance, Shri Harpreet Singh, Postmaster General, Dr. M.S. Sahu, and other dignitaries present in the hall for gracing this occasion. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, or we call it IBC in short, has completed 5 years of its momentous journey, which started on 28th of May 2017. Today marks the 5th anniversary of the establishment of the IBBI. We have assembled here today to mark these two occasions. As India celebrates 75 years of independence as Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, it is time to reflect on India's step towards the ultimate economic freedom, that is, the freedom to exit with the enactment of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code in the year 2016. By providing an efficient and effective exit mechanism to the honest business failures, the IBC has embodied the true spirit of Azadi, becoming the wind beneath the wings of distressed businesses in India. The objective of an insolvency and bankruptcy law is to provide an orderly process for the reorganization or liquidation of insolvent entities. It provides a legislative framework in case of financial failure of the firm, implying that the firm may be viable but is under stress. The process provides for a resolution mechanism where the business can be resurrected back to life in a new form with a new or revamped in the absence of an exit mechanism, either for the firm or the entrepreneur, even when it is in deep distress. The Indian economy suffered the inefficiencies of several Jumbi entities in the system. Given that the resources are scarce and failures are routine in a dynamic market economy, India needed a codified and structured market mechanism to put the underutilized resources to more efficient usage continuously and free entrepreneurs from failure. With the enactment of the code on 28th May 2016, India ushered in a new insolvency and bankruptcy regime in the country. 5 years hence, the code has delivered several favorable and wholesome outcomes for stakeholders. The ecosystem established under the code has facilitated the objectives of the code with alacrity, commitment for excellence, and relentless drive to steer effective and efficient outcomes. The code has rescued lives of corporate debtors in distress through resolution, and at the time has added filtering out of unviable firms through timely liquidation. It has also facilitated recovery of non-performing assets by banks. The code, being preventive in nature, has also brought behavioral changes. Consequently, there is a cultural shift in the dynamics between lenders and borrowers and promoters and creditors. Timelines have been significantly streamlined under the code, and the cost of resolving insolvency has come down significantly vis-a-vis the earlier regimes. The code has showcased how regulator plays an important role in making an economic policy a success. A market economy will function satisfactorily only when strong and well-performing regulator is present. In this context, 5 years mark the first important milestone in the lifetime of an organization, while it is a short period of time when it holds tremendous significance in building the foundation and core values of the institution in its early years. The IBBI was established by the Code on 1st October 2016 as one of the key pillars of the IBC ecosystem. Over the last 5 years, the IBBI has strived to live up to the expectations of its stakeholders, guided by the vision to be dynamic and proactive regulator that provides a responsive and conducive regulatory framework to facilitate improved and equitable outcomes for persons in financial distress. 5 years ago, when IBBI began its work to set up a fundamentally different and a completely new regulatory regime, its strategy of being a forward-looking, responsive, and engaging stakeholders aided it immensely in delivering its mandate. Being a unique regulator that regulates the insolvency profession as well as insolvency processes, the IBBI has strived to effectively address issues that have arisen due to the dynamic nature of the market economy and has been proactively engaging with its stakeholders in strengthening the ecosystem. With ever-changing regulatory environment and emerging technologies, it is imperative that the IBBI recalibrate its position from time to time to keep it relevant, dynamic, and responsive as a regulator. Being conscious of this imperative, IBBI is constantly facilitating processes under the code with required flexibility, strengthening the service providers in the insolvency ecosystem, including through IT initiatives, fostering confidence amongst its stakeholders through constant engagement, building knowledge in the area of insolvency, and disseminating information about the outcomes of the code. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs has been the stalwart of the nascent insolvency regime, guiding the actions of IBBI and providing strength and valuable support to the regulator. The regulated entities, that is, insolvency professionals, insolvency professional agencies, insolvency professional entities, information utility, registered valuers, and registered valuer organizations have constantly engaged with IBBI at the granular level, aiding IBBI in delivering its mandate effectively. The IBBI has been facilitated by other government departments and other regulators like Reserve Bank of India, SEBI, and CCI. The courts and tribunals have upheld the provisions of the code and regulations made there under many times. The IBBI has benefited from interactions with educational institutions, academia, and the general public at large. Supported by the commitment of the government, the judiciary, and the players of the ecosystem, it is hoped that the gains made so far will only magnify going forward, and the challenges on the way will be dealt with the same commitment and alacrity as has been done over the last 5 years. With these thoughts, I welcome you all once again to this evening of celebrations of the 5 years of the IBC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the welcome remarks. Giving a glimpse of the journey of the code, its performance, the successes, the landmark developments it has brought about in its nascent journey of 5 years, and also the contributions of the IBBI in delivering its mandate and the need for being relevant to the market dynamics for the board as well as for all the stakeholders. On this memorable occasion, we would like to showcase a short film which takes us through the eventful journey of the implementation of the code with remarkable contribution of the government, the IBBI, and various stakeholders of the IBC ecosystem over these 5 years.
India.
कोई गलत इरादा हो, कोई लालच हो, ये जरूरी नहीं है। देश में ऐसे उद्यमियों के लिए एक रास्ता तैयार करना आवश्यक था और आईबीसी ने इसका आधार तय किया।
The objective of the code is time-bound insolvency resolution of corporates, partnership firms, and individuals to maximize the value of assets, to promote entrepreneurship, increase the availability of credit, and balance the interests of all the stakeholders.
Timeliness is one thing about which all of us have spoken. Transparency, professional dealing are all wonderfully laid and embedded into the code, making it one of the very sought after.
The code has adopted a multi-pronged strategy for insolvency resolution of corporate persons. IBC is a dynamic law which has undergone a number of amendments to meet the emerging realities.
In the case of resolution also, they may take some haircut. So what will happen? The creditors will take a haircut, the banks will take a haircut, the unsecured creditors will take a haircut, the workmen will take a haircut, and the man who created the insolvency pays a fraction of the amount and comes back into management. Should we allow that to continue?
Marking its 5th year of operation, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, having faced a number of issues in its implementation and many legal challenges since its inception, has emerged as a dynamic law that answers to the calls of stakeholders in a time-bound manner. It has helped to protect creditors' rights, increase the flow of credit, and created a lucrative market for distressed assets in the economy.
Today, the code is facilitated by a thriving ecosystem comprising of strong institutions and competent professionals. As the last 5 years testify, the IBC has been able to yield outcomes in line with its objectives.
With the enactment of the IBC code, the creditor-debtor relationship has been realigned. The creditors have now taken their rightful place in the scheme of things with regard to availability of credit.
The code provides for reorganization in 2 ways. First, by rescue of the company through a resolution plan, failing which by closure of the company through liquidation. It enables the market to make the choice. The outcomes speak for themselves.
The code has been hailed as one of the most important economic legislations in recent times, having reformed the much needed exit mechanism for corporates to start with and having addressed an important aspect of ease of doing business in the country.
The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code has emerged as the cornerstone of our policy toolkit in resolution of stressed assets. The experience of IBC in the last 5 years has shown that it has been superior to all other frameworks in terms of recovery of loans, in terms of preservation of value of assets, in terms of creating credit culture, and also in terms of protecting jobs.
The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code is one of India's most significant recent business reforms. It has made it easier to do business and therefore improved foreign investor confidence in the country.
The code has immensely facilitated recovery of non-performing assets by banks.
In a short span of 5 years, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code has revolutionized insolvency resolution process. It has established supremacy of markets and the rule of law in insolvency resolution and professionalized resolution services.
The code has improved the business climate in the country, with India's ranking in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index improving by 84 ranks from 2017 to 2020. In the Global Innovation Index, India's rank has improved from 111 in 2017 to 47 in 2020 in the category of Ease of Resolving Insolvency. India has also been awarded the Global Restructuring Review Award for the most improved jurisdiction in restructuring and insolvency regime.
I look forward to further developments in IBC, which is a game changer for India's future.
In the words of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, the defaulter's paradise is lost. In its place, the economy's rightful position has been regained. The resounding success of the IBC in the first 5 years of its enactment, the juggernaut is moving towards emerging frontiers. The journey from hopeless end to endless hope has only just begun. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with immense pleasure that I introduce our esteemed guest of honor, Shri Rajesh Verma, Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Shri Verma has held several key positions in his illustrious career as a civil servant. As the Secretary of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, he is leading the policy discourse for the effective and efficient implementation of the IBC. He has steered major amendments to the law to address the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Firstly, suspending the use of the IBC for a period of 1 year to save companies from being pushed into insolvency due to the economic fallout of the pandemic, and then bringing about a special insolvency resolution framework, that is, pre-packaged insolvency resolution process for MSME corporates. We extend a warm welcome to you, sir, and request you to kindly address the audience.
Respected Dr. Debroy ji, Chairman of Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor, Ministry of Finance, Dr. M.S. Sahu, Shri Harpreet Singh ji, Postmaster General, Dr. Navrang Seni, Madam Muklita Vijayvargi, Shri Sudhakar Shukla ji, other dignitaries, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, my warm greetings to all of you, especially the IBBI family, for the 5th annual day today. It's a short journey, but momentous achievements have been accomplished during this short journey. The IBBI has emerged as one of the strong institutions, and without the strength of IBBI, the IBC code, as has been described by the previous speaker, and we have also seen in the short film, the journey which it has transgressed, it would not have been possible. In this short period of 5 years, entire ecosystem has been created, right from NCLT, NCLAT, that is the adjudicating authorities, the IBBI, the IPAs, the insolvency professionals, the registered valuers, and it requires actually the whole ecosystem to make any law for the success of the law. IBBI has especially, and the entire team of IBBI, I must say, has worked really very hard to make this code a success. So all of you deserve special commendation, and on this occasion of 5 years, and this is a journey which we have undertaken now, and it's a constant evolving law. It's a code, it's not an act, so it is always evolving. Some portions of the act have been commenced, some portions have still not been commenced. So it's a historic legislation for the entire Indian economy. It was a paradigm shift from a debtor in possession model to a creditor in control model, and it was needed to promote entrepreneurship, to release the credit, and to balance all the interest of all the stakeholders, and to provide the ease of exit for the entrepreneurs. It has succeeded in many ways. Today is the time that we look back at the journey of 5 years, pause, take a pause, and also look ahead and how we have to actually take this journey forward. Last 5 years, many achievements as have been shown. Even the number of cases, 400 odd cases, have released 2.54 crore. And one of the kind of impact it has on the credit culture can be seen from the fact that more than 18,000 cases, I think 18,500 cases involving an amount of more than 5.5 lakh crore were settled even before the case could be initiated under the IBC. That is the strength of the code. And the liquidation value, more than 175% of the liquidation value has been realized in the cases which has gone through the CIRP insolvency process. Almost one third, 31% of the cases were not even going concern. So this has helped in preserving employment, creating new employment, and really promoting the entrepreneurship. COVID-19 presented many challenges to us, as was just stated in the introductory remarks. We had to suspend IBC initially for some period, but ultimately we had to end up suspending invocation of the CIRP process, section 7, 9 and 10 for a period of 1 year. That helped the firms which were already facing the distress to take care of the activities. And the trigger also raised from 1 lakh to 1 crore for invoking the insolvency proceedings. MSMEs were especially affected during this period because of the disruption in the supply chain. And as soon as the suspension of IBC was lifted, immediately after that, we brought the pre-packaged insolvency process pre-pack for the MSMEs on the 4th of April. And IBBI has been always so efficient in discharging its functions and duties that I must really state on this occasion that all the regulations which were needed to actually start the pre-pack, they were passed by the board of IBBI within 5 days. That is a record. 4th of April, the ordinance is promulgated, and 9th of April, the regulations are notified by IBBI. This kind of efficiency, the regulator has shown. It has really, it's a commendable effort, and I must really commend the entire team of IBBI. And not only this is something which has happened recently, but the way the entire code, the first, it was stated May 2016, and then 1st October, the IBBI was there, the chairman was appointed, and then 1st December, we could commence the corporate insolvency. So, many of you must be there that time. Of course, we were not there, but we hear the kind of efforts, the kind of day and night working which has gone during that time, and the entire board of IBBI, all the, and it was only an institution which was created that time, an institution which was created, and the kind of delivery of results it provided, and we are looking back at 5 years. When we are looking at back 5 years, we must look back with a sense of pride in whatever achievements we have made, because that sense of pride will enthuse us to actually perform better in the future, and that the kind of performance which IBBI has actually delivered under the very dynamic leadership of Dr. M.S. Sahu. It is something which not only IBBI or not only Ministry of Corporate Affairs, it is for the entire government to feel proud of. He is actually the kind of hard work which he has put in. It deserves appreciation, deep appreciation, and though his tenure just ended yesterday, but I think he will be going with a sense of real achievement, and I'm sure this 5 years of his tenure, he will really relish, and he will remember it with a lot of feeling of pride that it was during this period that the IBC code was not only enacted, it was actually rolled out, and it was such a success during his tenure of 5 years, and it would not have been possible had it not been the regulatory efforts which were made during this period by way of issue of regulations, circulars, by way of creating a lot of other institutions. It is not only that IBBI as an institution, but it has also created the whole ecosystem, as I was telling, the appointment, the registration of IPs, insolvency professionals, insolvency professional agencies, the registered valuers. In fact, he also, the graduate insolvency program was also introduced during that period. Already 2 batches have passed out, and it is another institution is also going to take up in MP this insolvency graduation program. So it's a lot of work in progress, lot of other, and the kind of series of deliberations which we have had even in the recent past, in last few months. Dr. Subramanian is here, and Dr. M.S. Sahu, and all the members of the board. We have had discussion with all the stakeholders who are involved in the process and the deliberations to take it to to take the IBC, to define the frontiers, next frontiers of IBC basically. And number of issues have actually cropped up during these deliberations, suggestions for redesigning various elements of the code. So that is as I said, this is a journey which is ongoing. This is a work in progress, and it will continue. And there are many issues which need to be addressed, and there are many frameworks which actually have, as I said, it's still a incomplete code, and many provisions have still not been actually commenced. And there's a lot of work ahead, a lot of challenges ahead. So we will continue to work towards meeting those challenges and making this code a grand success for the economy. I wish Dr. Sahu all the best for his future endeavor, especially. And I wish all of you, the entire IBBI, the board, all the officials, all the members of IBBI family, all the best in their future endeavors. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful views on the IBC ecosystem and all the stakeholders involved with it, with the continuous efforts of the government in responding to the market needs. So also thank you for the words of appreciation for the board and Dr. M.S. Sahu, as we really strive to meet the expectation and deliver the mandates which are entrusted upon the board. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce our esteemed guest of honor, Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India and member of the Governing Board of IBBI, Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian. Dr. Subramanian is one of the world's leading experts on economic policy, banking, law, finance, and corporate governance. He has authored some path-breaking economic surveys of the Government of India, recognizing the integral role of policy making in charting the path to economic growth and social development. Sir, we are delighted with your presence and request you to kindly address the audience.
Dr. Debroy, Chairman, Economic Advisory Council to the Honorable Prime Minister, Rajesh Verma ji, though he's just left because he had a compelling assignment to go to, Dr. Sahu, former Chairperson, IBBI, Harpreet Singh ji, Saini ji, Mukunda Madam, and Sudhakar Shukla ji. All the other eminent dignitaries who have assembled here on this momentous occasion, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first start by congratulating each one of you, especially the IBBI family, for what I think is a very, very momentous occasion. In any economy, creative destruction plays a very important role, and the IBC is playing that role. As was mentioned in the video by the Honorable Prime Minister, the Bankruptcy Code now gives the freedom of exit to the promoter. There is this story, possibly apocryphal, about Alexander, which I want to relate to the freedom of exit that is provided by the IBC. The story goes that Alexander, after having conquered the entire world, was searching for ambrosia that would give him immortality. So he goes searching, reaches the cave inside which there is that ambrosia. He's accompanied by all his soldiers, but when he reaches the cave, he tells the soldiers to stay, because he doesn't want his soldiers to get that ambrosia. goes into that cave, and then finds the fluid, the ambrosia. Just when he's going to he picks up a palm to drink so that he could become immortal. Just when he's going to actually sip that, a crow that is sitting there says, "Hey, Alexander, stop. Just listen to my story before you decide to sip that ambrosia." He said, "I also, like you, wanted to be immortal, and therefore I sipped this ambrosia, and now I have been here for tens of thousands of years. I want to change myself. I want to transform myself, yet I'm stuck because I have gained immortality. I'm not able to, participate in this process of creative destruction." Hearing that crow's story, the apocryphal story goes that Alexander decided not to drink that ambrosia, comes back, despite having made so much efforts to have reached there. He comes back because he wants to also transform. He doesn't want to be stuck in the same state, being immortal. In a similar sense, the freedom of exit is an aspect that the IBC provides. And I think that is an important freedom that was not available to the promoters earlier. I want to especially remark about the seminal contribution that Dr. Sahu has made in making this very, very important legislation a reality. Certainly, there will be many, many chairpersons who will come after him, but he will always be the first chairperson of IBBI. When Sunil Gavaskar hit those runs to become the first player to score 10,000 runs in Test match history, which was actually considered the equivalent of Mount Everest, he said, "I'm sure there will be many after me who will actually score 10,000 runs, but I will be remembered as the first person to do so." So for IBBI, Dr. Sahu is our Sunil Gavaskar. Now that 5 years have passed in the IBC, there is, of course, debate about the outcomes that have come. And I think that is legitimate. It should happen. What I want to share with you is a perspective, certainly not the perspective. This perspective that I want to offer you is one based on the political economy of reform. In any democracy, when you think about reform, there's always this tussle between two sets of stakeholders. One, that is a vocal minority versus a silent majority. The vocal minority is typically one that has benefited from the status quo. Because it has benefited from the status quo, typically is far more vocal, knows how to access the corridors of power to have its voice heard. And that is why it is a vocal minority. On the other side of this tussle is a silent majority. The reason that this majority oftentimes stays silent is that they oftentimes don't even know the benefits that are going to come to them from the reform. It's only when those benefits actually transpire do they say, "Oh wow, I didn't realize that these benefits actually were going to come." Take the 1991 reforms as an example. I'm sure many of you will remember, I was back then in college, I used to read the Economic Times. We used to have a reading room in IIT Kanpur where I used to read them. And I actually remember this tussle then as well. A silent majority, most of us, I don't think realized at that point in time the enormous benefits that will come from reforms. So that is a very important aspect, that this majority that is going to benefit from this reform is usually one that does not know. In contrast, the vocal minority knows very, very well the costs that are going to come to them. So there is this asymmetry of information as well, that the silent majority does not have the information about the benefits that are going to accrue to them, while the vocal minority knows very well the costs that are going to accrue to them. And so there is not just an asymmetry of being heard, there's also an asymmetry of information, whenever we think about reform in a democracy. And this is something that we have to really remember very well. I'm sure you are actually seeing other examples of the same vocal minority versus silent majority being played out in other recent reforms. I'm not going to get into those, but I'm sure you actually know समझदार को इशारा काफी होता है. One key aspect that we have to remember here is the impact of the IBC. Before my PhD, I had the opportunity to work with a financial institution. A lot of my research has been on banking, financial sector, and especially the Indian financial sector. And so I've seen not only, for a short while worked in this, but at the same time, we've also done research for a long while. One big change that the IBC has brought is it has ended feudalism of the promoters in a capitalistic society. There is absolutely no space for feudalism in an economic society which is actually based on freedom. And yet, and I say this from experience and from having done research in this area, there are instances, without getting into specifics, one can definitely mention where when a loan used to come up for repayment, the conversation used to be, what can you do apart from just giving me a loan? Because if you don't give me a loan, this money is gone. So there was this right that was expressed that, you have to give me a loan. I think what IBC has really done is ended that feudalism. And by far, I think for me, there are a lot of other benefits which I will talk about, but by far, this is the most important benefit that IBC has generated. As we all will agree, in a democracy, in a free society, there is absolutely no space for feudalism. A lot of debate and the data that is put out, oftentimes, I want you to actually look at it from the same prism, the vocal minority versus the silent majority. But let me put out some facts to support the benefits that have come to the silent majority and will accrue in future as well. There is this data that is put out saying, the recovery rates have been 45%. Whenever we have to assess whether any number is high or low, we always have to compare it with a benchmark. Without a comparison, you can't say whether it's high or low. So let me offer you some comparisons. Firstly, let me state that if we do this number crunching a little bit more carefully, where the denominator does not include contingent liabilities, I think the actual number may be a little more than, maybe higher than 45%. That's the first point that I want to make. Secondly, what we have to do is, some analysts, for instance, will say, there are this 45% number is skewed by one or two very, very large recoveries, and they will exclude that and say the average is 25%. Now, as an economist, I actually want to highlight that those outliers are also ones that have resulted because of IBC. Because they have resulted, as a result of IBC, they cannot be excluded. When you consider the impact of IBC, you cannot do this cherry picking, saying, I will actually exclude those one or two outliers and then compute the average and say it is 25%. That is not how economics is, and policy is assessed. So that's on the facts itself. Now let me give you some comparisons. If we take the previous regimes that have prevailed, if you compare IBC to SARFAESI, and I'm quoting this from two excellent pieces that recently got published in Mint by Diva Jain, and I'm going to quote from there. So if you compare with SARFAESI, for instance, over a 17-year period, only 1 year out of 17 years was the outcome in SARFAESI greater than that of IBC, and that works out 1 by 17 is about 5%. So only in 5% of these years, was the outcome actually under SARFAESI better than that under IBC. In other words, 95% of the times IBC has been better. Similarly, if you look at it from the perspective of DRT as a comparison, Same 17-year period, only in 3 years has it been the case that DRT's outcomes actually have been better than IBC. That also tells you that 85% of the time, therefore, IBC has been better than DRT. This is a comparison in the time series, in India itself. Now let me provide you a cross-country comparison, and let me take the United States as a benchmark. Dr. Sahu tells me that the US has had a bankruptcy law for over 100 years. Some of my early research that I did, actually, I looked at the 1978 bankruptcy reform that happened in the United States. So I do certainly know the 1978 reform. In other words, the bankruptcy law has existed in the US for maybe a century or more, but at the very least, it has existed for the last 40 years, 1978. Yet, let's look at the outcomes. If you look at the recovery on the first lien, which is the first priority that is used. If you look at the data there, for the US, for a large sample period, the recovery is about 59%. Compare it to 45%, only a 5-year duration. I don't think even compared to first lien, we've actually done that badly. But when you come to look at a second lien, and I'll actually mention why this is important. If you look at the second lien, recovery on second lien loans in the United States, it's about 28%, 27.9% to be precise. Now, the reason this is important, ideally, in order to compare, we should take a weighted average of the first lien and the second lien loans, because the kind of deals that we are having now going into bankruptcy were outcomes of a lot of crony lending that was done before 2014. And I'm not giving you opinion. Actually, this is part of the evidence that we provided in the economic survey, in the 2020 economic survey, where we had a chapter called pro-crony versus pro-business. So when you actually do crony lending, obviously the recovery will actually not be as high. So even compared to that, even compared to the United States in terms of recovery, we've actually done pretty well. Now, another criticism that is leveled is about liquidations versus reorganizations. Let's again look at the data here. And I'm quoting here from the United States. This is data for 2019, data collected from US courts by this lady, Diva Jain. Out of almost 23,000 business filings that happened in the United States in 2019, 7,000 were Chapter 11 reorganizations. The remaining, which is close to 70%, were liquidations. Again, the data is overwhelming. If you look at the number for India, it is actually less than 70%. So even this criticism that there is actually too much liquidation, when you compare it and actually compare it in an honest, legitimate way, you will infer that the outcome from IBC has been excellent. As for the duration, again, some data. Until 2005, the average duration of the US bankruptcy process was 480 days. They did a reform in 2005, after which now they've been able to reduce it to less than 300 days. But before 2005, they actually had it, the average was 480 days. In other words, from 1978, when the previous reform happened, till 2005, their average was 480 days. Again, when you put the right benchmarks, you'll see why our bankruptcy process actually is possibly the most seminal reform in this country. And I say that from an economic perspective. Let me just offer one more perspective, and then would be happy to conclude my thoughts. It's also important to look at this from an ethical perspective. Across religions, not only in Hinduism, but in other religions as well, repaying debt is indeed considered as one of the ethical obligations. In Hinduism, we have what is called the doctrine of pious obligation, which means that if a parent dies without having repaid his or her obligations, then it is beholden on the progeny to actually take care of those obligations. Not only in Hinduism, even Islam and Christianity also have equivalents of that. In the absence of time, I'm not quoting it, but this is there in the economic survey, the chapter on nudge. So let me end, therefore, by appealing to the promoters and the entire ecosystem that manages the IBC First thing, let's all remember that compared to the population of this country of 135 crores, those that are involved in the IBC system, whether it is the promoters, whether it is the bankers, whether it is the insolvency professionals, all of us are extremely privileged compared to the average person in this 135 crore population. And therefore, the exhortation that comes to privileged people like this comes from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, shloka 21. Yad yad acharati shreshtatah tat tat evetaro janah sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Yad yad acharati shreshtatah, shresht, privileged, acharan, behavior. The way the privileged behave, yad yad acharati shreshtatah tat tat evetaro janah. That's how the remaining 135 crores, they look up to the behavior of the privileged. Sayat pramanam kurute. Praman is proof, not just talk. Sayat pramanam kurute lokas tat anuvartate. That's how those who look up to us behave. So this knowledge that is there, which is part of our culture, we must bring it into action. As C. Rajagopalachari beautifully says in the preamble to the Bhajagovindam song, knowledge that does not issue in action is useless tinsel. So let's utilize this knowledge and behave accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting the role of the code in the market economy and articulating the various facets like the freedom of exit, information asymmetry, status of promoters' rights, comparison of the IBC with the erstwhile regimes and the international jurisdictions. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest for the day has an official exigency, so we are having his keynote address, and thereafter we'll proceed for some of the scheduled releases. To commemorate its establishment, the IBBI has instituted an annual day lecture series. We are privileged to have with us Chairman of Economic Advisory Council to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Debroy, to deliver this year's annual day lecture. Dr. Debroy has made significant contributions to the game theory, economic theory, income and social inequalities, poverty, law reforms, railway reforms, and many others. He has been associated with several academic and research institutions and government organizations. He has authored several books, papers, and published articles, and has also been the consulting editor of several Indian financial newspapers. Sir has been awarded Padma Shri Award, the 4th highest civil award of India in 2015. We extend a hearty welcome to you, sir, and request you to deliver the annual day lecture on the topic, From No Exit to Easy Exit, a case study of IBC.
My dear friend, Dr. Krishnamurti Subramanian, the Chief Economic Advisor. Another dear friend, Dr. M.S. Sahu. Mr. Harpreet Singh, members of the IBBI board, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who have heard me speak earlier know that, like my dear friend, the Chief Economic Advisor, I intensely dislike written texts. Today I have a written text, and the reason I have a written text is out of deference to Dr. Sahu. But then I face a dilemma, and it's not going to be an easy exit for me. I face a dilemma because when I was sent the program, the time that was given to me was 45 minutes. And I have a meeting to go to. So may I draw attention of the IBBI board that timely resolution in terms of adherence to programs is also extremely important. So now, having got a written text of 45 minutes, I am left with about 15 minutes to compress it. So whatever I am able to say, I shall say. Whatever I am unable to say, Dr. Sahu has promised will put it up on the website as having been read. IBC and IBBI have, of course, left a stamp. Before coming here today, I thought they had left a stamp metaphorically. Today, if you wait for a while, you will realize that they're also going to leave a stamp literally. And I'm indeed honored that I've been invited to deliver IBBI's 5th annual day lecture. I'm not sure why. I'm not insolvent. I'm not bankrupt. I'm not an insolvency professional. I do possess an indirect professional interest, since anything that furthers the cause of economic reforms in India is of professional interest to me. But I have a suspicion the reason has nothing to do with all of this. Ever since IBBI was set up on 1st of October 2016, I've had a personal interest in IBBI, and that is because of my association with Dr. Sahu. I never quite figured out why he always says, not always, usually says MS Sahu. He keeps the Madhusudan part of it a secret. But I think that is also symbolic. In the last 5 years, at least for me, IBBI has been led by Dr. Sahu, and the chairman has been IBBI's face to the rest of the world. I hope all of you will join me in conveying my best wishes to Dr. Sahu for whatever he chooses to do next, practice law, write books, as he exits, and it has certainly been an easy exit for him. My best wishes to whoever happens to be the incoming chairperson. How can I not follow in the footsteps of my dear friend, the Chief Economic Advisor? I can't better him. He's quoted from the Bhagavad Gita. But there is a famous Sanskrit shloka. It is attributed to Chanakya, specifically to Chanakya Niti, but I have not been able to find it in any of the standard Chanakya Niti texts. It belongs to the category of what in Sanskrit is called Subhashitam. Subhashitam simply means good saying. And this Subhashitam is as follows. Lalayat panchavarshani, dashavarshani tarayat, prapte tu shorashe varshe putrang mitravat acharet. Let me translate it, if a translation is necessary. Nurture a son for the first 5 years, strike and punish him for the next 10 years. When he attains the age of 16 years, treat him like a friend. Why have I chosen this? I hope the allusion is sufficiently clear. Infant mortality rates in India are high, and so are under 5 mortality rates. But over time, both have declined. IBBI has survived the status of being an infant and has also survived the status of being an under 5 child. It has been nurtured sufficiently for the first 5 years. The time has also arrived to strike and punish it within reason. Birth is entry, death is exit. Medical treatment does its best to facilitate birth and postpone death. But eventually, death is inevitable. That is how life and evolution proceeds. It's a useful metaphor to remember even in the context of government policy and capital market efficiencies. All of us use the term reforms, and we mean different things by reforms, depending on the prism or the lens that we are using. But whichever definition, whichever prism we use, reforms are about efficiency and competition. Perfect competition in the sense used by economists does not exist anywhere. But even if I ignore that, there are a certain set of assumptions for perfect competition. And one of the requisite preconditions of perfect competition is not just measures to facilitate entry, but also free exit. Thanks to the World Bank, it was there in the audio visual, probably not a very sensible thing to do. Thanks to the World Bank, doing business is a buzzword for the wrong reasons now. However, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade has a parallel doing business ranking for states. That still continues to be a buzzword for the right reasons. Any enterprise, and enterprise does not necessarily mean corporate enterprise, faces three kinds of impediments in three stages of its life cycle: entry, functioning, and exit. Since 1991, in any discussions on reforms, there have been mentions of an exit policy, normally defined as an exit policy for labor. That's a wrong appellation. An exit policy is primarily an exit policy for an enterprise. Benjamin Franklin wrote in a letter, "Nothing is as certain as death and taxes." He is not the first person to say this. To use that metaphor of life and death, government policies must not only facilitate ease of industry, the primary focus particularly for industry and industrial delicensing in the course of the 1991 reforms, and ease of functioning, the thrust of what DPIIT does, but also exit. And that exit is not only about Chapter 5B of the Industrial Disputes Act, it is about the exit of enterprises in a broader framework. Some enterprises, if not all, have a product life cycle, a shelf life. All, as the CEA said, all enterprises cannot be immortal. Faced with competition, changes in technology, changes in the external environment, and inability to change internally, some enterprises have to close down. This is exactly what Schumpeter meant, borrowing an idea from Karl Marx, when he talked about creative destruction. And of course, we know, everyone here knows, that we have IBC and IBBI since 2061. Economists use the expression inputs, and usually they mean land markets, labor markets, capital markets. Capital markets in an economist sense, not in the loose sense in which it is used. And to get productivity, to get development, we need all three markets to be efficient. And that applies also to capital markets. Insolvency and bankruptcy, everyone present here knows, insolvency and bankruptcy had different etymological roots. But for present purposes, let us treat them as synonymous. In pre-modern legislation, most insolvency and bankruptcy provisions were about personal insolvency and bankruptcy. I don't know if you like literature. If you do, think of the debtors' prisons described in Charles Dickens's novels. Pickwick Papers, David Copperfield, Little Dorrit, even A Tale of Two Cities. Why did Charles Dickens consistently talk about those? Part of the reason, of course, was it's a topical item at the time in the Victorian age. But there's another reason, and I don't know how many of you are aware of this, which is that Charles Dickens's father was in one of these debtor prisons. And that left a deep impression on him. Before that, it's not that we didn't have legislation. We did. There were problems with those, which I don't have the time to get into. You're familiar with all of those, including the Presidency Towns Insolvency Act and the Provincial Insolvency Act and all of those. You find allusions to debt. I think the CA mentioned this. You find allusions to debt in our ancient texts. Kautilya's Arthashastra is one example. Shanti Parva in the Mahabharata is another example. Even Manu Sanghita is another example. But to come back to a point I made earlier, enterprises must exist, or at least some of them must. Economic evolution implies survival of the fittest. It's basic principle of competition. If I forcibly prevent this exit, I may not have survival of the fittest, but I will certainly have survival of the fattest. Think of all the assorted central PSCs that we are now trying to privatize. Many of them are loss-making. Many of them have eroded all their net worth. But the point to be noted is, many of these are actually sick private sector enterprises which were not allowed to be closed down and were nationalized. Resources are scarce. That's the reason first-year undergraduate texts on economics will invariably talk about opportunity cost. These resources must be productively deployed where they are most productive. The market performs this allocative task, provided we do not impede exit. So therefore, one, and I'm going through this in bulleted fashion, enterprises will fail and should be allowed to fail. Two, a failed enterprise must be punished and allowed to exit. Three, an enterprise failing is not the same thing as an entrepreneur failing. An enterprise might close down, but if the enterprise is allowed to close down, the entrepreneur can move on. And fourth, why does an enterprise fail? There are different kinds of reasons. Sometimes you have no option but to wind it down. Sometimes you can restructure. And the process for all of this must be transparent, credible, and swift. Unfortunately, before this, we didn't have that. Other countries have also evolved. They changed their legislation, depending on the country when. If I try to date it, US, 70s, Britain, 1980s, EU, 1990s. What is the point I'm trying to make? That compared to these countries which are normally perceived to be far ahead of us, with 2016 as a benchmark, we are not far behind. Of course, there were laws earlier, but there are all kinds of problems with these laws. I don't really have to mention them here in a gathering like this. When there is a disease, and it assumes acute proportions, there are severe symptoms. And one of those symptoms, and it has been mentioned earlier, was the NPAs. And what came to be called the twin balance sheet problem, which the CA keeps writing about in Economic Survey. Every cloud has a silver lining, so probably as a trigger, all of these provided a trigger for IBC to happen. When we look at IBC and try to gauge it, its success cannot be determined only on the basis, and the PM speech also mentioned this, cannot only be gauged in terms of values. Because if you look at IBBI's mandate, the IBBI's mandate is a much broader one, including developing the market, including advocacy, including bringing about behavioral changes. And despite these parallels existing on other countries, IBC and IBBI are rather unique. I don't think there is any comparable example anywhere in the world. Apart from anything else, here is a regulator which does not enforce its rules and orders. We have NCLT and NCLAT. Most of the time when people complain about the process, it is about NCLT and NCLAT. It's just as well that I have a time constraint, otherwise I might have said things about NCLT and NCLAT which I should not say. To reiterate an earlier point, IBC and IBBI are instances of what is called work in progress. And that's the reason there have been amendments, as was mentioned. Statistically, this makes it difficult to gauge the impact, apart from the point that I made about the metric used earlier. But more importantly, in those 5 years, there was also 1 year, because of COVID, when IBC was in abeyance. COVID affected every country in the world, and I personally happen to think India has handled it quite well. But the business environment wasn't normal. So out of the 5 years of evaluation, statistically 1 year goes in this. So it's almost as if I'm trying to gauge the progress of a child who has just turned 5, as IBBI and IBC have. But what do I do if for 1 year the child has not been able to go to an Anganwadi or a creche, and there are no health, weight, body weight measurements for that period? Let me make an additional point on the way we look at the performance of any law. Lawyers tend to look at it in a very static fashion. That's the training. Economists tend to look at it in a dynamic fashion, not in terms of what has happened as a result of a particular case, but as an example of what the law does in terms of affecting incentives and disincentives and creating a deterrent. And to me at least, IBC, or the evolution of IBC, is an interface between law and economics. Before IBC and IBBI, de facto, there was no exit, even though de jure there may have been some exit. IBC and IBBI have made it easy exit, though there is certainly scope to make it easier still. The child has survived and grown. As far as I can tell from the outside, it is not underweight, nor is it below the expected height. There is no stunting, but it is also time for the child to grow and develop into an adult. The rest of us who are outside the system will do our best to ensure this by chastising it. Dasha Varshani Tarayat. Thank you, IBBI, for having invited me. Special thanks again to Dr. Sahu.
Thank you, sir, for your unparalleled perspective on IBBI's journey of an enterprise in a competitive market, and the exit mechanism. Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed towards release of a few flagship initiatives of IBBI in celebration of 5 years of IBC and IBBI with contribution of some of our important stakeholders. These initiatives have been guided by the whole-time member, Shri Sudhakar Shukla, who is with IBBI for more than 1.5 years now. Sir is leading the research and regulation wing comprising of regulation of various processes under the code, data management, dissemination, advocacy, and many other divisions. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to commemorate 5 years of successful implementation of the code, the Department of Post has consented to issue a customized My Stamp on the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. May I request Shri Harpreet Singh, Postmaster General, Delhi Circle, Department of Post, to release the My Stamp on Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 and request other dignitaries on the dais to kindly join him in releasing the stamp. The stamp design inscribes the overarching objectives of the code as enshrined in its preamble. We thank Department of Post for release of the stamp. The stamp will be available to insolvency professionals through their insolvency professional agencies. Thank you, sirs. Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, on this momentous occasion, we would like to take this opportunity to release IBBI's annual day publication titled Quinquennial of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. This publication, a third in the series, is being released to commemorate the 5th annual day of the IBBI. It assimilates articles by eminent persons who have taken their precious time to record the eventful journey of the last 5 years of this landmark legislation, reflecting on its achievements, challenges, pitfalls, and offering solutions. It also presents a peek into what lies ahead as the IBC matures. May I request all the dignitaries on the dais to kindly do the honors and release the publication. So may please release the publication book in the red ribbon. Thank you, all the dignitaries. To commemorate the 5-year journey of the enactment of the code, the IBBI, in collaboration with Insolvency Professional Agency, the Indian Institute of Insolvency Professionals of ICAI, has designed an e-book titled 5 Years of Facilitating Ease of Exit. It captures the eventful journey of ecosystem, implementation, success stories, outcomes, awards and recognitions in the form of vivid visuals, photographs, and articulative text. We will play a short video of the e-book to showcase its contents.
उद्योग जगत की मुश्किलों को समझा गया है।
माननीय सभापति जी,
The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Amendment Bill 2019, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman.
Ladies and gentlemen, while this is an e-book, limited physical copies they have been published to mark its release. May I request all the dignitaries on the dais to kindly do the honors and unveil the physical version of this e-book. Thank you, sirs. Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to announce that IBBI successfully completed its second edition of National Online Quiz on the Code from 1st August 2021 to 31st August 2021 in collaboration with mygov.in and BSc Investors Protection Fund. The online quiz was intended to promote awareness and understanding of the code among various stakeholders spread across the country. It received an overwhelming response with over 63,000 participants, which reflected interest from a wide range of stakeholders, including students, professionals, and employed persons and alike. We take this opportunity to award the best performer of the quiz, Mrs. Sunny Pallavi, along with a gold medal and a cash prize of ₹1 lakh. Mrs. Pallavi is employed as a lecturer teaching English language at the RPPM College, Samastipur, Bihar, and is preparing for the civil services examination. Mrs. Pallavi has not been able to join us due to some unavoidable personal exigency. The award is being collected by an officer of the IBBI in her absentia. May I request Dr. Subramanian to kindly present the medal, certificate, and the prize. Ladies and gentlemen, may we please have a round of applause for the best performer as well as the participants of the quiz. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. Mukulita Vijayvargiya, whole-time member IBBI, to propose the vote of thanks. Dr. Vijayvargiya is heading the administrative law wing comprising of adjudication, prosecution, examinations, finance, and other divisions. Ladies and gentlemen, We have amongst us the former chairperson IBBI, Dr. M.S. Sahu, who needs no introduction wherever there is mention of IBC or the IBBI. Sir has completed an exemplary journey of 5 years with the IBBI. An acclaimed leader and a distinguished public servant, Dr. Sahu has led the discourse of new insolvency regime with great zeal, agility, and vigilance. He emphatically led the IBBI to enable it to establish its mark in the regulatory ecosystem, promising delivery of effective governance. May I please request Sir to kindly address the audience.
My dear friend, Dr. Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor to Government of India, honorable members of NCLAT and LT, full-time members and other members of the governing board of the IBBI, Mr. Singh, Chief Postmaster General, dear friends, journalists, ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely pleased to be here today. Thanks to the IBBI and Dr. Seni for their kind invitation. A lot of things have been told about the freedom. Dr. Subramanian has been consistently writing and saying that except for a short period since 1947 till 92 or so, India dominated the world economic scene, and it was essentially because India followed market model for development. I wish to give you some data just to relate how the freedom translates to growth or economic development. Not going very far in history, 1900 to 1947, when we did not have the so-called civil liberty, any freedom whatsoever, the growth rate was slightly less than or on average 1% for the entire 50-year period. When we got some freedom, civil part of it, that means we moved to a little more inclusive society, inclusive institutions, the growth rate improved from 47 to 92. We had 3.5%, which we used to call Hindu rate of growth. 92, we started with making provision for economic freedom. We moved in phases, of course, but that has translated to 1992 till 2021, except for this COVID period. The average growth rate India has experienced has been double of what we had from 47 to 92, on average 7% or so. Several studies linking this relationship that there's a very direct positive correlation between economic growth, economic freedom and economic growth, and this we in a different words tell that this is ease of doing business. Providing freedom, economic freedom means enabling people to do business with least obstacles in the system. This is all that insolvency law is doing today. The decade beginning in 90s, we started basically making the first round of provisions, which we call freedom of entry, when we had a set of legislations like Import-Export Control Act, Capital Issues Control Act. The names themselves had used the word control. That was the control and command regime. We liberalized those, we moved to so-called liberalization, privatization, globalization, junked those legislations which did not allow us freedom to do the business. And we started with the freedom at industrial development regulations that allowed people to take up business activity they want. We allowed capital market reforms, let people raise money on their own terms. If market is willing to give money for a company which will not make profit even for next 50 years, that's fine. That is what market wants. We move to that model. Let people have a freedom to raise money from market to invest in their dream projects. Not that the reforms, freedom to start became complete in the decade 90s, but we made substantial progress. After that, we came across that people should have freedom to continue business at marketplace. That is, I have freedom to do business, but I do not have to come on your way of doing business. My colleagues in Competition Commission of India who have been safeguarding this freedom, I had the opportunity to work there also. That means if I have financial muscle to sell a product below cost for an unreasonable long period of time, therefore I am not allowing to do business. In these cases, state comes to the rescue of the business persons if somebody is taking away my freedom. We made substantial progress. The legislation came in 2000, took some time because it got entangled with court cases, took some time for implementation of the competition law. But again, not that that reform is complete, but once we have allowed business to come up, compete at marketplace, have freedom, the next logical step is if a company is doing business in an environment where we expect competition and innovation to be the drivers of economic growth. This is the state policy to promote competition and innovation, and naturally when you have this kind of policies, all can't compete, all can't have the same level of efficiency. Some will run ahead of others, some will lag behind, or creative destruction will create companies and kill also many companies. So we needed a mechanism whereby someone who is not able to compete at marketplace must have a way to get out. If he is not having honorably voluntary exit, there is a provision also for compulsory exit, where Dr. Debroy was mentioning that distinguish between the enterprise and entrepreneur. So this is the freedom, the ultimate freedom, economic freedom, freedom to exit or freedom from failure. If somebody has failed at business place, nothing wrong in it, let him try his hands as long as he is honest. Honest business failures are expected. There must be a way to get out of it. I used to give the examples in the initial days. You see in Barakhamba Road some building constructed 25 years ago, 25-story building not occupied. You find 50 acres, 100 acres of plots of land in UP with the sugar, which used to be sugar factories lying unutilized. These are the things we are trying to release the resources and entrepreneur from Chakravyuha. I think in the 2016-17 economic survey referred to that while referring to IBs, that we are actually trying to release the resources and persons which are no more relevant in the current changed economic environment for either endogenous reasons, exogenous reasons, must be released, because idle, the resources being limited cannot remain idle. They must work for us 24 hours, all 365 days of the year. I was lucky that I got a chance. In fact, I personally feel very obliged. I had some role in the freedom to start, freedom to compete, but I got a greater role at this stage to contribute to be a part of the most fundamental economic reform that country is going through, freedom to exit. And I am extremely grateful that this actually became very soon a reform for, by, and of the stakeholders. It is government, of course, led from the front, but everything fell in place, as was mentioned. 1st October, IBI was set up. On 1st December, everything was in place in a 60 days time. And the rules and regulations that were written at that time, they are serving us fully well today. Absolutely no deficiency. Though we are learning, whatever we are doing was something first time. We were doing in the country something first time, new IBBI, new NCLT, new insolvency professional, new legislation, new process, everything new, brand new. But whatever was done in the past 2 months of time, of course, work has happened thereafter. Yesterday also 2 regulations have been issued. In fact, IBBI has issued regulation or amendment regulations 80. Yesterday number was 80. So that is the kind IBBI has been responding to the changing needs of the market. As we are learning, the system is learning, IPs are learning, everybody is learning, and we have you can say that a kind of knowledge management system in IBBI, though not very formal structured as of now. But we try to capture the knowledge and make use of that knowledge and very fast do it. And that model has worked so far. I can only thank, starting from government to IPs to RVOs, 2 brand new professions, insolvency profession and valuation profession have come up during this time. And several other institutions have also come up. But the kind of support the stakeholders have given, bankers, insolvency professionals, from every corner we got support, and in so many people,
stakeholders, direct, indirect, have contributed to this journey, making it memorable. 6 amendment legislations you do not see. In 5 years, 6 amendment legislation from Parliament, quite unusual. In my early days, when I was talking to my colleague from Ministry of Corporate Affairs, I was saying that in my early career in the securities market, I had seen from 92 to 2002, Mr. U.K. Sinha was also chairman and he was party to some ordinances, he is present here. So almost on every year we had an amendment law in securities laws. And I was thinking probably since this law is a brand new law we are working, we would have also similar annual amendment acts. But my colleague from MCA was saying that this is not securities law, it will not happen. But probably all underestimated. In fact, it has gone beyond the securities market in terms of amendments happening, 6 amendment legislations in 5 years. So big thank you to all of you, and NCLT and NCLAT particularly. They do the work. People see only 5,000 admitted or so, but they handle lakhs of miscellaneous applications, interlocutory applications, which are not noticed the kind of workload they have taken. So everybody, I can tell how IPs have struggled over this time in a hostile environment. Few times they have to face bloodshed, they have needed police protection. So many things that they have sacrificed to do this, but of course I am not ruling out there are always deficiencies. Everybody is doing fast time, there are deficiencies at some places, but everybody has performed outstandingly well. And as you saw the data, a very comprehensive figure from World Bank saying that in 3 years we moved from 136 to 52. That was the outcome in 3 years. Next 2 years we do not have data from the World Bank. So today I suffer my kind of relief and freedom. Relief in the sense, as an officer of IBBI, now I do not have to attend meetings, arrange meetings, return the phone calls, prepare the documents, reply to parliament questions, attend some summons from some higher-ups. These were fulfilling, but these were stressful. These are behind me now. And as regards freedom, as all of you, most of you, the government functionaries, they know, irrespective of one's personal assessment, we take a view whether we may appear before media, interlocutions. We tend to take a view, support the existing policy, IBBI, IBC, all that we have been doing. In fact, I had read somewhere that because I am an admirer of Mr. G.V. Ramakrishna, the past chairperson of SEBI. I have read it. He was appearing in a parliamentary standing committee, and he was asked, he was appearing as a secretary of the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. He responded to them very convincingly, but thereafter someone asked him, that is fine, that is your official position, but can you tell your personal view in this matter? So Mr. Ramakrishna replied, sir, on official matters, I do not have personal views. So this kind of now, the kind of not having the now, in the sense that I have the liberty to speak, write, whatever I wish, subject to the standard laws of libels and decency, those kind of things. But I am quite sure that today's ecosystem is so strong that both IBC and IBBI are on much stronger and competent hands. So I wish the IBBI and all the stakeholders all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for elucidating the essence of this law and contribution of the stakeholders. We are extremely delighted to hear your perspective and are grateful to have got this opportunity to be a part of this journey under your unparalleled guidance. Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request Dr. Mukulata Vijaybergia, whole-time member, to kindly propose a vote of thanks. Ma'am has been leading the administrative law wing comprising of adjudication, prosecution, examination, finance, and many other divisions, and is also exercising the powers of disciplinary committee of the board.
Thank Thank you, Archana. Respected our Chief Guest, Chairman of Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, Dr. Debroy, he has left. Respected guests of honor, Secretary Minister of Corporate, he is also left, Mr. Rajesh Verma ji. And our Chief Economic Advisor, Ministry of Finance, Dr. K.V. Krishnamurthy Subramanian ji, who is also the member of the governing board of IBBI. Mr. Harpreet Singh, Postmaster General, our respected Dr. M.S. Sahu ji, Dr. Saini ji, Dr. Shukla ji, and other esteemed members of the governing board, distinguished guests, and sabhi upasthit bhai and behno. It is a great privilege for me to propose a vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who have made it convenient to attend and made their presence here on the occasion of 5th annual day of IBBI and commemorating 5 years of IBC also. Before I extend vote of thanks, I would just like to say that the ease of exit which the chief guest and other dignitaries talked about, and its necessity also. I think ease of exit is equally important as ease of entry, especially in case of a corporate person which has a perpetual succession. We find in case of individuals, birth and death. But in case of corporate personality, it has perpetual succession, certainly. Either it will continue, and there was a difficulty regarding dissolution or liquidation also, time taken. And that is the reason this code was enacted. I would like to recollect or remind that ease of exit is necessary, and we come to know from Mahabharata. Already our chief guest has discussed about Shanti Parva of Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, I think we all know the story of Abhimanyu, who entered all 7 Chakravyuhs, but he could not get exit because he did not have the knowledge of exit, how to come out of those 7 Chakravyuhs. I think in this context, this IBC is significant because it has laid down the process of easy exit, time-bound exit for the good of the economy, ease of businesses also. I extend my thanks. I am grateful to Dr. Debroy for graciously accepting our invitation and delivering an enlightening address. In his address, Dr. Debroy took us to the journey of ancient India regarding recovery of debts, Chanakya Niti, Kautilya's Arthashastra, that's Chanakya Niti, Manu Samhita, and Shanti Parva of Mahabharata. He also mentioned about other statutes regarding recovery of debts which are existing at present, maybe Surface Debt Recovery Tribunal Act. He rightly pointed out that reforms are about efficiency and competition. So is the case of IBC. He also pointed out that economic evolution means survival of the fittest. I think this point is certainly to be taken note of. And he also pointed out that an enterprise failing is not same as entrepreneur failing. I think that distinction needs to be made while implementing these provisions, which the earlier legislations failed to take note of it and provide for them. I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to our guest of honor, our Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Mr. Rajesh Verma ji, who pointed about the achievements of achievements under IBC and also the efforts or measures taken by IBBI. He stated about the challenges and measures taken especially after COVID-19 to meet those challenges. We are beholden of you for your guidance and encouragement which you have provided us in the task of IBC regime and its activities on a more meaningful and functional lines. I also take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude and I'm grateful to our guest of honor, our member, Dr. K.V. Krishnamurthy ji. He was passionate enough, I think. He took us to the past, the ancient India, where we can find solution for easy exit. He emphasized on the creative destruction for the benefit of the society. He clearly stated that IBC, what benefit we got from IBC, he clearly stated that the IBC has ended feudalism of promoters. I think for the first time we used to talk of it, but in clear terms, I think freedom we got from Britishers, but freedom of that feudalism of promoters, I think that is the objective of the IBC. He also mentioned about the vocal minority and silent majority. I think this fact got unnoticed earlier while framing other acts. He also referred to the Bhagavad Gita, where कैसे आचरण करना चाहिए और श्रेष्ठ पुरुषों के द्वारा आचरण किया जाता है. I think we all need to take note of our scriptures, elderly wisdom of rishis and manishis, so that also becomes for us to ease. We can have a ease of processes also. I express my gratitude to Postmaster General, Delhi Circle, Department of Post, Mr. Harpreet Singh, for release of the customized my stamp on the IBC. We are grateful to the Department for Post for giving this opportunity. I also thank Dr. M.S. Sahu, who drew attention to innovation and competition, the basics of today's business. And he highlighted that honest business failures require easy exit. That's I think, need of the time. So that the release of the resources from the Chakravyuh, we can have the release of resources from the Chakravyuh. He also stated about new things first time which were done by IBBI while exercising powers under IBC. I thank the team from National Film Development Corporation and IMAK News and Entertainment for their dedicated work on the short film on IBC. I thank the eminent personalities and various stakeholders who spared their valuable time to be featured in the film. My sincere thanks to Thinking Cap Creatives Limited for designing of IBC My Stamp and designing and printing of IBS publication released today. I also thank all the persons from media who are present here. In the end, I thank all my colleagues at IBBI, officers, research associates, assistants, and also all those persons from IPS, all insolvency professionals, personnel and officials from IU, registered valuers organizations, registered valuers also, for marking the presence here to commemorate our 5 years of IBC. I thank all those persons who have worked with great dedication, cooperation, participation to make this program a great success. Before I conclude my vote of thanks, I would like to quote, I think, words of wisdom of Shri Arvind, who was a great Rishi and Manishi. Before beginning and without an end, as space eternal and as surety sure, is fixed a power divine which moves to good, only its laws endure. We have best practices in the businesses, but because of no provision because of absence of any legislative provision, I think there is no binding effect. और उस वक्त हम सब लोग सोचते हैं कि हम क्या करें और क्या नहीं करें. In this regard, Lord Krishna in Gita rightly said that कर्तव्य अकर्तव्य की अवस्था में शास्त्रीय प्रमाण होता है और शास्त्र हमारा कोड है. उन्होंने कहा है 16वें अध्याय में श्लोक नंबर 24। तस्मात् शास्त्रम प्रमाणन्ते कार्य कर्तव्य स्थितो ज्ञात्वा शास्त्र विधानोक्तम कर्म कर्तुमर्हसि। कर्तव्य की अवस्था में ये कोड ही प्रमाण है। यदि एग्जिट के लिए कुछ सोचना है तो वी हैव अवर कोड एंड वी हैव टू कंप्लाई एंड फॉलो दिस कोड, द रेगुलेशंस मेड देयर अंडर, एंड देयर आर प्रैक्टिसेस which can facilitate further for the ease of exit. 4 पंक्तियाँ मैं आपको आज बताना चाहूँगी इस कोड के बारे में। मैंने कुछ लिखा है। कोड का सब पर अनुशासन हो, कोड का सबको आश्वासन है, बिकॉज वी मेक लॉज जस्ट टू एंश्योर दैट एवरीथिंग इज फाइन एंड इन ऑर्डर। कोड जीवन के स्वर में बोले। It's dynamic because we have had many more amendments. कोड एग्जिट करने के लिए उलझी गांठों को खोले। कोड के आंगन में मिले अभय। There is no imprisonment or the prosecution for the past deeds as per section 32A. कोड विधि के आंगन में मिले अभय हो, लोकतंत्र में सर्वोदय। कोड मंगल में हो, कोड के द्वारा मंगल में निदान हो, और कोड ही दे न्यायोचित समाधान सभी कारोबारियों को। With these words, I thank everybody for making your presence here, and I thank all the dignitaries who have made today's program a successful program. Just I would like to say that our chairperson, former chairperson, Dr. M.S. Sahu, he has brought us to this extent. He has made this journey a very successful journey within a period of 5 years. 5 साल का बच्चा 18 साल का हो गया है, ऐसा लगता है। May I invite everybody to give a standing ovation to our Dr. M.S. Sahu ji.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the concluding remarks and your enlightening words. We at IBBI extend our heartfelt gratitude to all the distinguished invitees for sparing their valuable time and gracing us with your presence. We also thank all our stakeholders who joined us online. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request you to please rise for the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे।
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request you to kindly join us for the high tea outside the hall in the lawn. Thank you so much.